Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this presentation about the European Standardization System. This is a presentation part or an introduction to the technical body officers training that we will have online on the 10th of December of 2020. Let me take a moment to introduce the speakers of this session. We have my colleague Cinzia Miseroli, Director Standardization and Digital Solutions, and my colleague Alberto Simeoni, who is a customer relationship manager for members and also an account manager for the technical boards, the so-called BTs. So please, Alberto and Cinzia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Elsa, and good morning, everyone. We are pleased to be here with you today to present and to give you a first insight about the European Standardization System. And as a matter of fact, today we will cover aspects related to which are the main actors of the European Standardization System, which are the deliverables, that means the documents that we produce that are European standard and other type of documents, our relation with the international dimension and with ISO and IEC, the aspect related to standardization and our link with legislation, and in particular Regulation 1025. And in relation to that, also the possibility to request funding for the development of standards, as well as we will touch upon some updates on guides that were published a few years ago and then were recently upgraded. But let's start with the first item, that are the actors of the European Standardization System. Well, a large number of actors are involved in standardization on different levels. We have 34 national members, the national standardization bodies in CEN, and the national electrotechnical and the national electrotechnical committees in CENELEC. On European level, we have, as you know, three different standardization organizations, CEN, CENELEC, and ETSI, which are officially recognized as competent in the area of voluntary technical standardization. And at international level, we have the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, and the International Electrotechnical Commission, IEC, with whom we have cooperation agreement in place, and we closely monitor and develop standards together with, as well as ITU, the International Telecommunication Organization, which is the one that is the corresponding international organization of ETSI. It is important to underline that the CEN and CENELEC members are the same one as the ISO and IEC members. There is one major difference, though, when it comes to the work that they perform in this in the organization at European international level, is that once we have a standard that is published at European level by CEN and CENELEC, our members are obliged to implement it as a national standard and withdraw any conflicting national standards. That is not the case when it comes to the international standards developed by ISO and IEC. But we will go much more in details about European standards later on in the presentation today. The European, we have a European regulation that is, as a matter of fact, framing the work of CEN and CENELEC, that is Regulation 1025 of 2012, which has entered into force in 2013. And as a matter of fact, all the CEN, CENELEC, ETSI on one side and ISO and IEC, ITU are clearly identified in this piece of legislation. Yeah, as you can see from this slide, indeed the organizations are clearly defined, and the regulation 1025 clearly sets all the rules and major rules and proceedings related to the European standardization system. And you will see throughout the presentation that we will often refer to regulation 1025, in particular when it comes to those standards that are developed in support of a specific sectoral legislation. There are, as a matter of fact, there are many actors that are involved in the standardization system. At national level, we find a variety of experts that participate in what we call the national mirror committees that represent sectors such as industry, academia, certification bodies, public authorities, consumer organization. All those that have an interest participate in the work, both at national, European and international level, every time they do have an interest in the development of a standard. When there is an interest for creating for developing a standards or another specification at European level, either this is done through an already existing technical body or by establishing a new technical body. And when this is done, the actual drafting of the document is done in working groups where experts participate and actually contribute with their knowledge and expertise in the development of the document. Those experts are, as a matter of fact, those that are identified at national level as the ones that have the right expertise, the right competence to contribute. And they participate in the working group as in their personal capacity as experts, but they also have to be aware of the positions of all the other experts and the other representatives at national level. When it comes to the technical committees and the technical bodies, which are actually the ones that remain ultimately responsible for the development of the documents, the participation is done through the national delegation principle, and our members identify those that can represent them. And every time they take a position in the technical committees, this is based upon discussions that take place at national level. There are representatives also in the technical committees that do not come from the national members, but they can come directly from European organizations such as European Federation representing specific interests that have the possibility to send representatives in the work, both in the working group or at technical committee level. This is to complement, let's say, the participation at national level, while we support and we strongly invite all stakeholders to participate through our members. We have also representatives of European institutions that have the possibility to participate in the work of the technical committees, especially when the standards that are developed are in support of European legislation of European policies. There are guidance for the participation of the European organizations and how they can contribute and participate. This guidance is available, and as a matter of fact is, as you see here in the slide, CEN CENELEC Guide 25. Of course, every time there is a request from one of those organizations to participate in the work of the technical committee, the final decision on whether allow that or not, it lies within the technical committee. In Brussels, we have the CEN CENELEC Management Center, which is in charge of the daily operation of the activities of CEN CENELEC, the coordination and the promotion of our activities. And in particular, we are also responsible for the correspondence and liaison with the services of the European Commission and of the EFTA Secretariat. The CEN CENELEC Management Center is organized in three main directorates: the Standardization and Digital Solution, which is the one that oversees the activities of the technical committees, that supports our members and the technical committees throughout the development of the standardization deliverable, from their initiation until the publication of the documents. And of course, we are also responsible of the technical boards and of all the proceedings and the request, for example, from technical committees to the technical boards, the approval of the standardization request when it comes again to documents that are in support of legislation. And we also oversees everything related to the digital transformation of our products and processes. There is a second team that is the one on governance and partnership, which is responsible of the communication related activities, the policy engagement toward the Commission and the European Parliament, and everything related to strategy and membership. For example, you might be aware that in this moment we are finalizing the development of the CEN CENELEC Strategy 2030, which provides a bit of foresight view on the future role that CEN CENELEC will play in support of the industry and the internal market. The third big theme is the one on market perspective and innovation, which focuses on two main activities. The one on the link with the research and innovation, and trying to bridge the gap between the research projects and to support their input into the standardization system. And on the other hand, is in order the outreach activities, in order to make sure that our standards can be uptaken also in other countries or regions of the world, and whenever there is a need. Of course, this whole the CEN CENELEC Management Center is led by our Director General, which is who is Elena Santiago Cid. We work closely together with our members. Just to again to give you a bit a close up on our on the Standardization and Digital Solution Department, we have 4 main teams that follows the technical activities, which are the manufacturing team, the mobility, the electrotechnology, and the energy and living teams. And those teams are the ones that really support and follow the work of the technical committees and provide them with their relevant guidance. Then we have the digital solution team, which is the one that follows the editing and the finalization of the document. as well as the team is also in charge of everything related to the data and the management of the data, and as well as on the transformation of our documents from a PDF and Word document into XML document. And the final team is the one on the technical board that is led by Alberto, which is taking care of this training with me today. And as I mentioned before, is the one that is in charge of all the proceedings related to the technical board, which is the main governing decision-making body when it comes to the technical work, and supervises all the work of the technical committees. And now I leave the floor to Alberto, which will cover the main aspects related to the European standards and the other deliverables that CEN CENELEC produce.
Thank you, Cinzia, and good morning, everybody, also by my side. Just a few words on the technical boards, as Cinzia has introduced them. It is very important for all of you as technical body officers that you are aware that CEN CENELEC have the technical board. So we have two technical boards, one for CEN, one for CENELEC, and it's the decision-making body on technical matters. And basically, the technical boards decide on all matters concerning organization, working procedures, coordination, and planning of standard work. They approve the CEN CENELEC technical policies and technical strategies and are in charge of operational management. The main principle is to work by exception, meaning that the set of rules and procedures that have been defined by technical boards should cover the need of the technical bodies. But wherever technical body needs an exception, needs a special measure, then they can refer to technical boards. How? You are TC secretary or TC chair, so you can contact the PM, the project manager in CCMC, in order to be advised on how to cope with requests to the technical boards. In, let's say, the most common one that I'll also report in internal regulation part 2 is to have the green light on new proposals for new work items, approve the TC business plan, impose or release the standstill obligation, coordinate the work between technical bodies to avoid any overlap. And also, as Cinzia mentioned, the technical boards have the final responsibility for organizing the technical liaison with the European associations that should be approved upfront by the technical committees. And of course, is to consider rules on appeals and they follow up requests also from the CEN and the CENELEC General Assembly. You see there is a difference here because the CEN technical board report to the CEN while the CENELEC technical board report directly to the General Assembly. And this is a very simple drawing to make you understand what is the hierarchic level of standards development. So at the top, we have the technical board, and then of course the technical committees are report to the technical board, and the working group is where actually the actual drafting of the standards happens. The working group refers to the technical committees. And also we have several BT working groups. You can see there on the right part of the screen that report to technical board, among which there is the BT working group, CEN CENELEC BT working group 14 on rules and process, where all the common rules for CEN CENELEC are discussed and recommendations are prepared for technical board for final approval. so that we can change and keep always up to date our procedures. And also the CENELEC only BT working group on BT efficiency to improve the rules concerning only the CENELEC environment, while the CEN only technical rules are discussed within the CEN BT or CEN BT TCMG. I think this slide is very important, but I hope that already for most of you is I hope redundant. So what is a standard? A standard is a technical document that prescribes technical requirements to be fulfilled by a product, process, service, or system, which are voluntary in use. And here you can see I put in bold and with the big font the concept of voluntary. Standards are always voluntary. This is what we do. We are not, we don't have legislative power. We understand we are private associations. Also at national level, most of our members are private. And so the concept of voluntary nature of standards is key. Of course, then it may happen that legislation, both at the national or European level, may change the nature of the standards, but this is not within our power. And the standard is produced by all interested parties in a transparent, open, and consensus-based process. It is intended for common repeated use. So, of course, if you work on prototype, you don't want to have a standard. And is approved by a recognized body. This is a very key element. It is recognized also in the definition in Regulation 1025 of 2012, as Cinzia mentioned, on European standardization, because the recognized standardization bodies like CEN CENELEC at European level, ISO, IEC, ITU at international level, or like the NSBs and national committees at the national level, have in place those procedures that allow to ensure a transparent, open, and consensus-based process. And of course, standards can help the national and European legislator to implement the policy and legislation. This is an overview of the sectors where we work, the domains where we work, and it's basically the allocation of standards per sector. This is our active portfolio. In total, we have more than 23,000 standards. And here you can see which are the sectors with more standards. We have defined 14 sectors that you can see here in the slide. And also, we also try to classify the standards per topics, because of course we can have topics that can be intersectorial, so horizontal. And more we will see that this kind of topics will appear, because the economy and society is becoming more horizontal, especially ICT matters are cross sectorial, but also the concept like the circular economy or accessibility are also cross sectorial. And now let's come to our portfolio in terms of products. At European level, you will find the product here on this slide. So you will find European standards, the EN, the CEN or CENELEC technical specifications, TS, technical report, TR, CEN or CENELEC workshop agreement, CWA, and only for CENELEC, but only in some specific technical committees, you will have the HD, the harmonization document. So what is a European standard? It is a document, it is a technical document that normally contain quality, safety, or performance requirements. Is I would say the result of a full consensus process, transparent, open, and also can be used in support of EU legislation. It is published in 3 official languages, the 3 official languages at European level, but of course then the national members have the chance to provide the national translations, and must be implemented identically at the national level by the CEN CENELEC members. So identical adoption as national standards, and of course conflicting national standards must be withdrawn. And the difference, one of the difference between CEN and ISO and CENELEC and IEC is that we do not sell European standards, but only our members can do it, while at international level, the international standard bodies can sell their standards. And is a review every 5 years. A review does not mean automatically revise the standards, but the review is that assessment to see if the standard is still up to date, if still reflect the state of the art, and if it is not the case, then it is revised. Otherwise, can be confirmed. Of course, when drafting a standard at European level, our members are requested to block any standardization activity on that matter at national level. So this is the concept of standstill. As Cinzia mentioned, this presentation will give you the main highlight of our system. Then our colleagues will provide you with in-depth information for these topics. For instance, we will have some colleagues of CCMC that will go through the whole process of the standards process, identifying what are the main milestones and possible issues. This is just to give you an overview of the standards process, the new standard process. It is in place from April 2020. We used to call it the flexible process because basically we pass from a concept of rigidity. You will see here in the drawing 34, which is the 34 weeks, which is the default period for completing the work under stage A. You see there in the dark blue, and 34 weeks to complete the work under stage E, which basically are the 2 stages for TC work. So from the approval of the work item, stage A, until the dispatch of the draft for inquiry. And then the stage E starts from the closure of inquiry to the dispatch of the project for final vote. Of course, when this happens, when the formal vote is not skipped already at the inquiry stage. So from this concept of 34 weeks fixed for each work item, with a flexible process, we go to a concept of flexible time frame. And this depends on the TC needs and capabilities. So it is up to the technical committees for each single work item whether to decide how much time they need to work under stage A and stage G. So it is no more prefixed, but it is to be planned by the technical body officers, of course, in coordination with the TC at the moment that the new work item is created. Here on the right, you can see a link. This link will drive you to a CEN CENELEC webpage, where you will find the trainings that we have given in 2020 on the flexible process, the last of which took place a few weeks ago in October 2020. So I really recommend you to take a look. So European standards, some example, we have test and measurement standard to measure the content or parameter, product standard to specify the product, performance requirements, the management standards, these are the models for managing activities, and the standard service to provide some requirements for the service. Then the second product that we have in CEN CENELEC is the technical specification. Basically, you can consider it as a kind of pre-standard. This must be published in at least one of the 3 official languages. The inquiry is not mandatory, while you know that European standards follow the full process. Can be in support of European legislation. And here I say in temporary support of European legislation, because of course then a TS can be upgraded into a EN, but we have case where the European Commission in a standardization request the ISOs to develop TS, and is announced and made available at the national level, with the difference that conflicting standards may continue to exist and may conflict with other technical specifications, while the TS cannot conflict with an existing European standard. And of course, since it's a pre-standard where basically the consensus is not fully consolidated at that moment it is developed, can be transformed into European standard later. And it is reviewed every 3 years at least. This marks a difference with a technical report, which is basically an informative document to provide information on technical content of standardization work. May include, for instance, data, laboratory tests, data on work in other organizations, and it does not contain requirements. So one of the difference with the TS is that while a TS can be upgraded one day in a EN, a technical report, it is very difficult because it does not contain a requirement. It is adopted at simple majority, and it is made available to the CEN CENELEC national members by CCMC. No time limit is specified for its lifetime. The last product is the CEN CENELEC workshop agreement. The main difference is that this is developed in a workshop, and so not within a technical committee. And so this marks the main difference from the 3 previous products. So the workshop is basically flexible working platform with light procedures. The workshop participants are responsible for the CWA content and not the technical committees. And the workshop is open to any company or organization, even outside Europe. It is published in 1 language only. It is voluntary application. And this is listed in the CEN members' national catalogs and can form the basis for future European or international standards. So a CWA could then become maybe a TS as a first instance or a EN at the end of the process. And of course, the copyright of a CWA is always for CEN CENELEC. In this table, you will find an overview, a comparison between the 4 products for your easy understanding. Now we go to section 3.
Yes, thank you, Alberto. And this is really a first glimpse at the international agreement, the agreement that we have with our international counterparts that will be the subject of dedicated trainings. In order to avoid the next slide, please. In order to avoid duplication between standardization at international and European levels, for the benefit of contributors and users of standards, as well as to increase the efficiency of standardization at European and international level. CEN and CENELEC have signed agreements with their respective international counterparts that are the International Standardization Organization ISO and the International Electrotechnical Commission IEC. And these agreements set out rules governing cooperation. In particular, when it comes to ISO and CEN, we have in place the Vienna Agreement. The next slide. Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks. There is the Vienna Agreement was signed between CEN and ISO in '91 and recognizes the primacy of international standards and aims at standards to be recognized simultaneously at international and European level by means of improved exchange of information and mutual representation at meetings. In line with the agreement, either CEN or ISO shall take the lead in drafting new standards and or other related other documents, and shall be presented for simultaneous approval by both organizations. In this way, ISO members can influence the content of the CEN standards and vice versa, noting that for Europe, European members of ISO are the same members of CEN. But because of also the different implication of having a European or international standard, as I mentioned earlier, once you have a European standard, this needs to be implemented at national level. Sometimes the voting results on European or international standards that have been developed in parallel might be divergent. As a matter of fact, today we have approximately 30% of the CEN standards are developed under the Vienna Agreement. This 30% takes into consideration the historical evolution over the years. But if we take into consideration only the recent years, 2000 in specific, 2019 and 2020, for instance, we see that this percentage is much higher, and we are going closely to 40% of identical publications. As I mentioned earlier, the objective of this agreement is really to avoid duplication, to make best use of the resources, to go international as much as possible, and therefore to promote the global economy, and to make sure that we have, as I mentioned earlier, rational use of also the back office resources, not only from the technical committees and the experts, but also between the CEN CENELEC Management Center and the ISO Central Secretariat. The Frankfurt Agreement. In October 2016, during the annual IEC General Meeting in Frankfurt, the IEC, which publishes the large majority of international standards for electrotechnical and electronic devices and systems, and CENELEC, have signed the Frankfurt Agreement that will increase the harmonization between international and European standards. As a matter of fact, around 80% of all European electrotechnical standards are identical to or based on IEC international standards. This level was already achieved through the Dresden Agreement, which was signed in '96 between both organizations. However, a lot has changed since then, global trade in electrotechnical and electronic devices has accelerated the difference, and the difference between products have become a lot smaller. And the new Frankfurt Agreement takes these changes into account and aims to bring the ratio of harmonization between international and European standards up to an even higher level. And we are working closely with IEC to make that happen. Under the Frankfurt Agreement, the primacy of electrotechnical standardization at international level in the IEC is reinforced. And of course, again, one of the main objectives is to avoid the duplication of efforts and make the best use of European and IEC experts. And whenever we try to go international as much as possible, of course, we take also into consideration European specificities, and specific measures and procedures are in place in order to consider European elements whenever needed, and in specific when it comes to those standards supporting specific pieces of legislation. And that's it from my side. I think that we, as said, we briefly covered these two agreements that will be further developed in separate trainings.
Now let's see how standardization can support European legislation. And of course, we refer to Regulation 1025 of 2012 that I would say, has consolidated all the previous directives that already since the 80s provide an use of standards in support of European legislation. As you can see here on the screen, there are already some important industrial sectors that since decades are already provides standardization in support of legislation, like the personal protective equipment, medical device, low voltage equipment, machinery, lifts, fertilizers, which is quite new, and so on. We have more than 30, more or less, sectorial legislation making reference to standards. And here on the right, you can see a link to the official European Commission webpage on harmonized standards, where you will find all of them. And if you dig in each of these European legislation, you will see also the list of standards that support that legislation. And this technique is called the new approach. It was the 80s, and now we refer to it as the new legislative framework. It basically is the new approach concept that were integrated by elements regarding market surveillance, accreditation, conformity assessment. So this is now, I would refer to the NLF, new legislative framework, as the legal framework where that the European Commission, that European institutions has put in place in order to ensure the free circulation of products and services. So in general, the new approach directives define essential requirements of a product and basically indicate what shall be achieved without specifying the how. Then the reference to standards come actually to specify the how. So with upon a request of the European Commission, which is what we call now standardization request, in the past was known as mandate, CEN CENELEC developed the harmonized standards. And the standards set out the technical specifications to meet the directives requirement. I will explain in the next slides how these work exactly. The final goal is basically of the NLF and the new approach in particular, principles to help manufacturers to comply with essential requirements through the compliance to the technical standards. So this is what is basically the hierarchy between the legislation and the standardization. Of course, the public authority that is a legislative power identify, set the goals in the European legislation. You see there in the upper side of pyramid, the co-legislators in this regards are the European Council with the European Parliament and the European Commission as the initiative in proposing legislation. So we refer as co-legislators to the three institutions. And in the lower part of this pyramid, of course, there are the European standard bodies. We are private, independent, and standards are voluntary. So it's two different levels. The standards serve how to reach the goals that the legislator has set, but are not the only way to do it. So that's why they are voluntary. And this is basically, this is the process. So the European Commission, based on European policies and legislation, decide to issue a standardization request to the ISOs, so in this specific case, CEN and or CENELEC. CEN and CENELEC with the national members, and also consulting the national experts that will have to undertake this possible work in future, will decide whether to accept or not these standardization requests. So there is no obligation for these to accept the request. We have 1 month to reply, and de facto are the CEN and CENELEC technical board that will decide whether CEN or CENELEC should accept a standardization request. Of course, in this regard, as Cinzia explained, we are very interconnected with ISO IEC. So ISO IEC, so the fact that work in ISO IEC are available to fulfill the standardization request is taken into account by CEN and CENELEC. And of course, we want to keep alignment with the ISO and IEC standards. When a decision is taken by the CEN CENELEC technical board, we accept or refuse the standardization request. In case we accept, we go to the next line, where basically a technical committee is identified to carry out the job. One technical committee or more technical committees, if appropriate. And a standards is then developed. Of course, here there is the intervention of a third actor, which is the consultant. Now we refer to the H as consultant, which is an expert both of the legislation and also of the matter that is of the scope of the standard. And as basically this consultant has to assess whether the standards comply with the requirements in the standardization request. The assessments take place in different stages of the standards development. If at the end of the process there will be a green light from the assessment, then the standard will be offered. So you will see the arrow, European Commission as harmonized standard. And then the European Commission has the final power whether to cite the reference of the standards, which means basically the standards number and the title in the official journal. As you will see in those pages of the European Commission, there are more than 3,000 standards that today are listed in the official journal to support European legislation. This is Regulation 1025, the title. These are the main novelties that it has introduced in respect to the previous directive covering standardization legislation. And in particular, in bold, I want to highlight the importance of all stakeholders in participating in the technical committees at European level, but also, of course, at the national level, because then the experts comes from the national level. And in particular, Regulation 1025 has identified 4 categories of stakeholders for which an ad hoc European organization for their representation in European standardization have been constituted. And these are the representatives of consumers. So we have ANEC, which is the European organization representing their interest in European standardization. The environmental interest, we have ECOS, the social interest, meaning the workers' safety, which is ETUC. And then we have the organization representing SMEs, which is a small business standards, representing SMEs at European level. And of course, you as a technical body officers, whenever you will see a request from the representatives coming from these organizations to participate in the specific technical bodies, of course, you need to grant them the access. Then Article 6 is in particular for the national standard bodies, so our national members, to facilitate the participation of the SMEs in national European standardization. And then I would like to also draw your attention to Article 8 and 10. Article 8 is the Annual Union Work Program. We refer to it as AUWP. And it's basically an annual document, the European Commission's draft, to identify the European Commission priorities in standardization. And every year we have the AUWP for the next year. So in 2020, the European Commission will publish soon the IUWP for 2021. It is important to take this into account because already there we have an idea of what are the next possible standardization requests the European Commission may intend to issue to us. Article 10 instead covers the full process of the standardization request. So how the Commission has to consult the relevant stakeholders, and of course ISOs are included. What is the role of the Committee of Standards in approving the standards request? So the member states basically approve, gives the green light to the European Commission to issue the standards request to the ISOs. And then also the articles on how the assessment and citation of the standard needs to be carried out. To summarize the main principle, so a standards request is a precondition for citation of harmonized standards in the official journal. So if that standard has not been requested in a standardization request, cannot be offered to the European Commission. There is an assessment of the compliance of the standards with the requirements in the standardization request. Annex ZA in CEN and ZZ in CENELEC are obligatory for the candidate harmonized standards to be cited. And I think that those of you that already deal with mandated work and the assessment are very aware of this. The final citation in the official journal is always the responsibility of the European Commission. So even if there is a positive assessment of the consultant, anyway, the final responsibility lays in the European Commission responsibility. And here at the website, you can find all the cited standards. I mentioned the Annex ZA. This is for CEN. Please do not mix because the Annex ZA is in CENELEC is something else. So in CENELEC is Annex ZZ. And you can see here there is basically a table where you can see the correspondence between the clause of the standard. So this is a table. This annex is attached to a harmonized standard. And here you will see in this table that are the clause of this European standard, how they fulfill the requirements of the directive, exactly making reference to the clause of the directives. The same stands for the CENELEC ZZ. And of course, this is an important information for the manufacturers that at the end is the one that really benefit from the harmonized standards, because when manufacturing a product and having the test when declaring the conformity can understand to which extent the standards covers the essential requirements. For you to know that since 2019, the European Commission has changed the way they cite standards. Before, there was a consolidated list of applicable harmonized standards published in the C series of the official journal. Here I give you the link so you can take a look. So series means communication, the communication part of the official journal, while now also the citation of standards is a Commission implementing act. Therefore, it is a legal act, and therefore it is published in the L series of the official journal. And of course, this gave more responsibility to the European Commission in ensuring that the citation is correct. I will give you some highlight on how it is possible for the technical committees, for the members having the secretariat, technical committees and working groups, request funding from the European Commission to develop deliverables. I need to make a clear point here that we are basically at the end of the framework partnership agreement that started in 2014 and will end in 2020. So what I'm saying, what I'm telling you is what basically is valid under the current FPA. We are negotiating with the European Commission a new framework partnership agreement from 2021. And of course, we will give you then a ad hoc webinar on the novelties of this FPA once it will be signed. So this is to let you know that in Europe, there are, of course, the European financial regulations, and then we have, let's say, the framework, the financial framework is given by the framework partnership agreement. In the picture here, in the low part of pyramid, you will still see the one of 2009, because there are still some ongoing projects, contracts that have been signed under the FPA 2009. Then on the other side of the pyramid, maybe it's covered by this banner, is the FPA from 2014. And also the framework program for research and innovation that is under the Horizon 2020 program and will be Horizon Europe in the next years. You as technical body officers, you need to know that some technical work can be funded. What? All those activities relate to topics of possible interest of the European Commission. If there is a standards under development that is within a topic for which there is an important European policies or legislation, then this can be offered for funding, for possible funding to the European Commission. Of course, before launching the process that I will show you in the next slide, always consult upfront of the desk officer to see if there is an actual interest. Otherwise, we launch a process, but then there is a negative response from the European Commission. Basically, the TC, and when I say TC, means the TC Secretariat, and of course the Secretariat is held by a member. So the member holding the Secretariat has the interest to start this process. So the TC Secretariat will fill an ad hoc form. And in CEN, this will go to a BT working group 217 that will decide on the prioritization of the contract. So there will be an assessment by the members of BT working group 217. If it is positive, then a formal quotation can be prepared. Of course, it is up to the TC Secretariat to prepare the quotation, but with the support of CCMC. This refers to CEN. Why? Because basically today we have almost only CEN projects that are submitted to European Commission for funding. In CENELEC, this is not a practice in place. Anyway, in case there is an interest from CENELEC technical bodies from this picture, basically you have to start from the very end, because the BT working group is a CEN only BT working group. This is the project flow. So when a quotation is prepared, of course, it is shared in the early stages already with the European Commission's officer. And then when there is agreement, a contract is signed with European Commissions. CEN or CENELEC signed the contract. Once the contract is signed, or even before, some the activities for subcontracting expert can be launched by the members holding the Secretariat. And in the contract, there is always the step for delivering a technical and financial report. So basically, the technical report contains what are deliverables that have been developed so far and what have been the cost. There is the review by the European Commission, and in case of positive review, then there is the payment. Of course, there is a partial payment at the beginning, and then there is the final payment where the contract has been completely, where the deliverables in the contract have been delivered. And this project can be audited by the European Commission. They make a sample for the auditing. So it is important that all the administrative papers are well stored, and of course all the expenses need to be justified if requested. As I say, the new FPA may change some elements in this contract. This is why I don't want to focus on the number of days to give you too many details, but we will come back with you to you with a specific webinar as soon as the new FPA is in place, covering from 2021 and the next years. For any problems, of course, contact CCMC. We are here to help you.
And now we would like to finish this presentation by giving you a quick update on a couple of guides that actually are not new, that were recently updated, and they are available, as a matter of fact, since the beginning of October on the CEN CENELEC website. And these are Guide 23 and Guide 29. Why? Because these are really guides that provide some detailed information on specific deliverables on one side, and also on how to inject the output of research and innovation deliverables into standardization. And these, as a matter of fact, are also included. The review of these guides is also included in the CEN CENELEC Innovation Plan that was adopted a couple of years ago by both CEN and CENELEC, and that aiming at really increasing the engagement of the research and innovation community in standardization. And one of those is Guide 23 is more generic on how this can happen, whereas Guide 29 is really related to the CEN and or CENELEC workshop agreement that most of you might be familiar with, that has been slightly refined, I would say. In particular, Guide 23 in the past was focused on the injection of any specification developed by a third party into the system, whereas the newest version of this guide really focuses on the outcome of the research and innovation projects, and really to promote the engagement of this community with the members, and provides a series of best practices. In particular, the Guide 23 content focuses on elements relating to how the research and innovation projects can liaise with the relevant CEN and CENELEC technical bodies, and we have, as a matter of fact, a dedicated approach in the CEN CENELEC Guide 25 that was mentioned earlier on in the presentation, that really focuses on these specific cases. And we can indeed have project liaison, whereby representative of the research and innovation projects, for example, those that were funded by Horizon 2020 or now Horizon Europe, with the technical committees, and then they can send representative in order to follow the work of the specific documents. The guides also try to clarify how we can interact in a better way with all the research and innovation projects, also beyond the project liaison mechanism. And indeed, we invite also the members to closely follow those projects, and that could be the basis for the development of future deliverable, mainly technical specification, technical report, and CWA. Why I say mainly? Because usually the outcome of the research projects might not be stable enough, and so we need a trial period before the full development into European standards. The guide also includes some elements related to the support that is expected from the CEN and CENELEC members towards those projects and towards the research and innovation community, in particular when it comes to raising awareness and educating a community that might not be so familiar with standardization. Members are also expected to monitor as far as possible emerging new topics and that might be subject of standardization activities in future, and are also, the members are more than welcome to participate and contribute to the research and innovation projects themselves. We have cases whereby we have, for example, consortia contacting directly either CCMC or the members, because one of the output of the funded project is really a standardization deliverable, and so it's important that one of our members is involved, if not more, of course, is involved from the beginning in the projects itself. One important aspect is that for this community, recognition is critical. Therefore, we indicate that it's important to recognize their participation somehow in the document itself. Usually, it's proposed that this is done in the foreword of the document. Guide 29, on the other hand, is rather well known, and it's focused on the workshop agreements. And that, as you know, is a fast-track process into standardization. And again, it's not a major change when it comes to its content in respect to the previous version, but there are nonetheless some novelty introduced by this guide. One thing that is not changed is the fact that a CWA is a deliverable that is developed within a workshop that might be CEN and or CENELEC workshop. And it's a deliverable that is agreed by all that participate in this in the workshop. What is recognized those is that CWA might be used more and more to address those topics that might not be addressed in standards or in technical specifications. So for example, also in the guide itself, there are reference to, for example, computer code, text files, and those more innovative kind of content that we might identify. And so, of course, designed to meet an immediate need, and we consider it as a first step towards the development of other deliverables. And of course, you know, this is another element that has not changed within this new guide, and is that is a direct participation for those that have an interest. It's important to note that an overview of all the responsibilities that are linked to the development of the workshop agreement are included in a dedicated annex to the guide, not only the work repartition between the member and CCNC, but also what is expected by the different stakeholders, and also an indication of the time that might be needed for the development of the workshop agreement, and this allows a better planning for the member. And this is particularly important for the projects that are funded in both, for example, by the European Commission, because usually they have a very tight schedule for their delivery. Yeah, the workshop might be initiated either because the proposer contacts directly a member, and therefore the member is responsible and will hold, that member is responsible, will hold the secretariat, and in technical board decision might be needed in order to kick the activities. Another possibility is that the proposer contacts directly the CEN CENELEC Management Center. In this case, a call for interest is launched among the technical board members. The guide is clearly structured, and there is a first part that indicates how the projects initiate, and I said the allocation of the workshop secretariat, the creation of the proposal, and all the steps up to the workshop launch. There are also guidance related to the responsibility and the drafting of the CWA. One novelty, I would say, in relation to the previous guide, relates to the it's clearly spelled out that the workshop can coexist with a technical body within the same domain. However, what is encouraged is a clear dialogue between the CWA with the workshop secretariat and the technical body secretariat, and eventually also ensuring that there are representatives from the two bodies in each other activities. Lifetime review, also in this case, there is some novelty here, there, and because while the time frame for the lifetime of the CWA has not changed, well, we consider a maximum of 6-year time frame with a first 3-year review. What is encouraged is that as soon as the CWA is published, the relevant technical body is contacted in order to assess the possibility to immediately start the transformation of the CWA into a new deliverable. This is really, in a nutshell, the content of the guide, and I really invite you to have a look at it, and don't hesitate to contact us in case of need or further clarification. There are, to the guides, there are, of course, relevant annexes that are the templates for the workshop proposal. There is, in order to support you in the drafting of the documents, there are some standard text for part of the CWA, namely for the forward and the coverage, and an overview with, I said, dedicated time frame of the different actions that are needed for its completion, and of course the allocated responsibilities. I said, this is a very, in a nutshell, also an overview of the 2 recently published guides. And this completes our presentation today. And of course, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to contact either Alberto or myself.